It's no secret that DC is known for taking some risk with their characters every now and then. Back in 1938, they were having men lift cars over their heads, which nowadays is pretty standard for heroes, but still. Either way, DC knows how to surprise their readers. What is going on, all you nerdy folk out there? My name is Jack, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Today we're going to be talking DC and some of the most shocking moments that have come to us from the pages of their comics. Now, if you like hearing us talk about DC, then we have got you covered. I did a video a few weeks back talking about some of the biggest DC events of all time, so if you are still itching for some content when you're done here, I highly recommend you head over there to get your fill. With that in your mind, let's start talking DC. Number 10. Superman and Wonder Woman's carnal embrace. Hopefully we all know who Frank Miller is, one of the most influential and popular creators in comics today, having wrote and illustrated Batman: The Dark Knight Returns and The Dark Knight Strikes Again. Ring a bell? Okay, good. Well, Frank Miller was also responsible for one of DC's most disturbing moments when he portrayed Superman and Wonder Woman, how should I say this, getting it on? All things considered, we've probably seen worse, right? After all, DC had Superman and Wonder Woman dating as part of their New 52 continuity, so it should come as no surprise that the two would, you know. However, Frank Miller's over-the-top writing showed that this act was actually killing an untold number of people. How, you might ask? Well, in one specific case, as these two godlike beings fly up in the air and crash down to Earth during the act, we see earthquakes erupting all over the planet, hurricanes forming, tsunamis going nuts, and Hawaii was actually completely evacuated. All for the payoff of a super dumb pun, with Wonder Woman noting that the Earth moved. But sure, it's a cute joke, but how many people died due to the carelessness of these two? Now, I couldn't find the exact issue that this takes place in, but I know what happens in The Dark Knight Returns, so if you know it or can find the issue, post it in the comments below so we can all check it out for ourselves. Number 9. No More Watchmen. In the last issue of the original Watchmen limited series entitled A Strong and Loving World, we get a truly shocking reveal. Ozymandias was actually the bad guy all along. Turns out he was responsible for the deaths of thousands in New York, the death of the comedian, the accusations on Dr. Manhattan, and the framing of Moloch. Sure, that is shocking to say the least, but there's actually more, as it's what happens after that that's truly shocking. Now, don't get me wrong, Ozymandias' intentions were good. He did all that he could to prevent a nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the US. But it was still an injustice for Rorschach, and he wanted to expose Ozymandias. Setting out to do so, Rorschach encounters Dr. Manhattan and tells him exactly what happened. Dr. Manhattan tries to stop Rorschach from exposing Ozymandias, but Rorschach responded by saying that Manhattan had to kill him first in order to stop him. Now, in a shocking turn of events, Dr. Manhattan actually vaporized Rorschach and chose to believe in Ozymandias' cause instead. If you haven't already read this unlimited series, I highly recommend that you go back and check it out, starting with 1986's Watchmen, number 1. Number 8. Emerald Twilight. In the mid-90s, DC decided that it was finally time for the second and most well-known Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, to step down from the mantle so that it could be passed on to someone else. So how did DC decide to end the career of one of their most beloved heroes? Well, they couldn't just send him off quietly. Of course, they had to turn him into a villain of some sorts, undoing pretty much all of the good he's ever done. In the reign of Superman's storyline, which took place after the death of Superman's storyline, Hal's home of Coast City was completely destroyed by the villains Mongol and Cyborg Superman. As a result, the city was demolished and its 7 million citizens were killed. This turn of events made Hal completely lose it, and he believed that if he could steal all the main power batteries' energy, the source of the Green Lantern's rings, he could permanently rebuild Coast City. To do so, he killed all of the remaining Green Lantern Corps and the villain Sinestro, which led to him becoming the villain Parallax. To DC's credit though, they later redeemed Hal by having him sacrifice his life to restart the sun during the Final Night storyline, and revealing that his madness had been caused by being possessed by an entity made of fear. Hal would later go on to reform the Green Lantern Corps thanks to the expert guidance of Jeff Johns, but Emerald Twilight does still remain a black spot on DC's legacy. Check out this insane storyline for yourself in 1994's Green Lantern Volume 3, number 48 all the way to number 50. Number 7. The Killing Joke. Now, I feel like I've already mentioned this before, but I am gonna mention it again. This is probably my favorite Batman storyline ever. The story involved the Joker breaking loose from Arkham Asylum, kidnapping Commissioner Gordon, and attempting to drive the man mad, all to prove that it only takes one terrible day to drive anyone crazy, which is actually a theme that was revisited in the Dark Knight movie, in which the Joker believes anyone will do terrible things if the circumstances are bleak enough. Along the way, Joker attacked Barbara Gordon in a way that still has people talking decades later. Joker shot her through the spine and paralyzed her. Later, while trying to drive Commissioner Gordon crazy, Joker showed him pictures he took of Barbara that showed Joker took off her clothes and insinuated some pretty bad things. Although regarded today as a classic Batman/Joker story, The Killing Joke has also received some deserved criticism for the way that it had the Joker paralyze Barbara Gordon, making her another victim in the woman in the refrigerator trope, which I will talk about just a little bit later. Barbara did later become a hero to many paraplegics when she became the cyber crime fighter known as Oracle, but the circumstances of her paralysis are still considered some of the most exploitative moments in comic book history to today. If you think you can stomach it, check out this one shot for yourself in 1988's Batman: The Killing Joke. Number 6. Identity Crisis. Now at its core, Identity Crisis is a love story wrapped inside a murder mystery with a concerted effort to bring real-world crime and quote-unquote darkness to the Justice-leaked Ivory Watchtower. It all starts with the death of Sue Dibney, the elongated man's wife, and from there it spirals into a story of lines being crossed by which supervillains and heroes. Addressing heavy topics like forced mind wiping, the story made some readers pretty uncomfortable, and when all was said and done, the family members of a few heroes were dead and the reputations of others were tarnished in brand new ways. It's eventually realized by Dr. Midnight, Mr. Terrific, and Batman, all separately I might add, that Sue was murdered using some pretty familiar tech. However, it's not done by someone that you would expect. Cover your ears now if you don't want to hear who it was. Okay, the murderer was Jean Loring, the wife of the Atom who was committed to Arkham Asylum after she's discovered. There are two viewings of Identity Crisis. One is a dark tragedy reflective of the real world, and one is a tenaciously destructive tentacle of the Watchmen squid monsters still wriggling around 15 years later. I've only seen the former, but if you've seen the latter, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Haven't read it and want to give it a go? Well, check out 2004's Identity Crisis #1 all the way to 2005's Identity Crisis #7. Number 5. Jason Todd's death. The death of Jason Todd was so surprising that it not only shocked readers, it shocked DC themselves. Now the character has had a pretty weird history, as he was introduced as the new teenage Robin after Dick Grayson grew up and became Nightwing. But fan reaction to Jason was pretty mixed. In 1988, DC Comics writer Denny O'Neil pitched the idea of making the readers vote via a 1-900 number on how a story would end, and O'Neil knew the vote couldn't be on something small, so he decided the vote would be about the fate of the second Robin, Jason Todd. Knowing that Todd was relatively unpopular, it would help settle what needed to be done with the character. So setting up a 36-hour voting period, readers got one of two numbers to call from the back of Batman number 427. The ending of that issue showed us the Joker beating Todd with a crowbar, leaving him in a warehouse that was set to explode. Then issue 428 came out and the final vote was 5,343 for killing Todd and 5,721 against it, meaning his fate was sealed. Jason Todd was dead, and the iconic image of Batman carrying Todd's body that followed was one that is still recognizable to most comic fans today. Years after the event, O'Neil revealed there was actually someone who programmed their phone to call every 90 seconds for 8 hours. That person chose the same option every time for Jason Todd to die. Totaling around 320 votes from that one person alone, O'Neil has gone on record saying that one person was the reason why Jason died in the first place. If you're not familiar with this storyline, aka Death in the Family, check it out for yourself, starting with 1988's Batman Volume 1 number 426 to number 429. Number 4. Alexandra DeWitt's death. For so many heroes, one of their biggest fears is that their secret identity will get out and put their loved ones at risk, so generally they do all they can in order to prevent that from happening. In Kyle Rayner's case, he learned the hard way what happens if you're not careful enough. After taking over the Green Lantern mantle from Hal Jordan and receiving his power ring, Rayner seeks out his girlfriend Alexandra, or Alex DeWitt. DeWitt wasn't sure what to make of the new power Rayner had acquired, but eventually helped Rayner control and understand the potential he had command over. In hindsight, probably not the best idea, because one day he came home and found out that she had been killed by the supervillain Major Force and had been stuffed into a refrigerator. Kyle, obviously upset and motivated by anger and regret, sought out Major Force. Kyle almost killed Major Force before his ring runs out of power, and then Major Force takes over the fight until his quote-unquote green rock that powers the power rings turns into a lantern battery and charges Rayner's ring. Rayner finally subdues Major Force, but when he begins to interrogate Major Force over why he was there and why he killed DeWitt, the police arrive and try to take Rayner away. Rayner obviously flees and runs into Alan Scott, who tries to console him over his loss. DC writer Gail Simone, now a legend in her own right, was horrified that the company had consented to kill a female character in such a gruesome way, merely to motivate the male protagonist. She coined the term "women in refrigerators" for any time women in comics were killed, seriously injured, violated, or depowered merely to motivate male heroes, and she published a long list of such cases. Check out her death for yourself in 1994's Green Lantern Volume 3, number 55. Number 3. Death of Superman. In 1992, in response to not being able to do their original story, which was to have Lois Lane and Clark get married, due to conflicts with the then upcoming Lois and Clark The New Adventures of Superman, the writers of the Superman titles just decided to straight up kill him instead. The way they pulled this off was to introduce a new character, an almost unthinkable monster whose only purpose was to destroy things. Dubbed Doomsday, he cut a swath of destruction towards Metropolis. Jump forward a little bit to 1993 and we see Superman take on this unstoppable bad guy. Now obviously Superman was able to take down the bad guy because he's, you know, Superman, but both Doomsday and Superman ended up succumbing to their injuries at the end of the fight. While some heroes have been resurrected multiple times, this was the first and only time that Clark Kent bit the dust, and it sent shockwaves through the entire world of comics. The aftermath of the story followed how the world reacted and who showed up to take its place, the latter part featuring the introduction of several new characters who stuck around to help form the later DCU. Death of Superman is one of the most far-reaching media events in comics history, and that coupled with the return of Superman changed the rules for DC forever, opening the door for anyone to come back to life. Check out the storyline for yourself so you can see firsthand what this death meant to the DC universe, starting with 1992 Superman The Man of Steel Volume 1, number 18. Number 2, Crisis on Infinite Earths. By the mid-1980s, many of DC's superheroes had been around for about 50 years, and things were starting to get a little bit confusing. Early versions of characters didn't match up with later versions, and the comics had way too many continuity problems regarding ages, time periods, powers. There were just little flaws in continuity everywhere, especially with their bigger characters. Now while most fans were willing to overlook these flaws, it was becoming more and more problematic with each passing year. Crisis on Infinite Earths changed the whole landscape of the DC universe and served as the first time a comic book company would reboot its entire continuity in order to revamp everything. Crisis on Infinite Earths essentially wiped out all of these continuity issues, the multiverse, and even several characters, because, you know, back when character deaths actually meant something, giving us a streamlined, consistent DC universe for the first time in a very long time. The storyline itself brought together heroes from all over DC's universes to battle the Anti-Monitor, and ended with some major deaths. As well as resetting the DC universe and revitalizing characters and storylines, Crisis was one of the first major overarching comic book crossover events. It really goes without saying, but if you haven't read this storyline yet, then you're truly missing out, so check out 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths number 1, all the way to 1986's Crisis on Infinite Earths number 12. And number 1, massive layoffs. This is actually something that Amanda brought to my attention, and when I read more about it, I knew this had to be at the top of our list today. Taking place in early to mid-August, so this month, there were rumors going around that DC had not only laid off a ton of employees, they'd also completely shut down DC Collectibles. Described as an absolute bloodbath by reporters everywhere, those said to have lost their positions are Editor-in-Chief Bob Harris, Senior VP of Publishing Strategies and Support Services Hank Cannells, VP of Marketing and Creative Services Jonah Wieland, VP Global Publishing Initiatives and Digital Strategy Bobby Chase, Senior Story Editor Brian Cunningham, and Executive Director Mark Doyle, who oversaw the rollout of the Black Label graphic novels. That's not even including the other 600 employees that lost their jobs as well, so needless to say, this is a hefty bunch of people who lost their jobs. For now though, it does remain to be seen just how much these layoffs will affect DC and how the publishers will bounce back. That'll be it for this video everyone. DC has been around for so long, which means there are so many more shocking moments we could talk about, so let us know in the comments below some of your favorites, and who knows, we might include them in a part 2. If you haven't already, subscribe to Top 10 Nerd to stay up to date on all things nerdy, and while you're at it, why not ring that notification bell so you know whenever we upload a video. Now as always, my name is Jack, thank you all so much for watching, and make sure to stay nerdy my friends.